Hi guys, it's Scanner here. In this video we're going to talk about alternatives that you can explore if you're getting a little bit tired of Games Workshop. Now recently in the community people have noticed that Games Workshop isn't always the nicest company in the world. I've been into the hobby for around 30 years now. I actually started out pretty much with Games Workshop and have been in and out of love with what the company does over the last 3 decades. So I am not new to what many of you might be experiencing for the first time. The best advice I can give to anybody who loves the hobby and loves Games Workshop is to love the hobby outside of Games Workshop. So in this video we're going to talk about a lot of different game systems that you can play that will give you that great feeling and provide you with a lot of very cool miniatures that you can paint and play with. For the most part, you'll be able to use all manner of scenery that you might already have developed for your Games Workshop hobby, or the games will just be so cheap that there won't be much of a reason not to simply jump in. So let's get started. Up first, I want to talk about Infinity by Corvus Belli. Infinity is one of my favorite science fiction themed games. It's a skirmish based game, and the miniatures are second to none. The miniatures are so perfectly in line with what I like to see on the table. It's terrifying. It's like these people crawled into my brain and started making a game based off what I think just looks cool. So the interesting thing about Infinity is the fact that it comes in two, you could argue 3 different versions. If you buy a starter kit, you get Kickstart rules. Then there's Code 1 rules, which are like a simplified middle ground for the game. And then there's currently N4, which is the very deep, complex end of the game if you want to explore that. These starter sets are incredibly solid. They come with just stunning miniatures, fantastic quality card terrain in there too. And if you have somebody to go in with you, this is actually one of the cheapest ways that you can get involved in any aspect of the hobby, I would maintain. The only downside to Infinity for some people, not for me, is the fact that they make pewter miniatures. Some people just don't like that. Me, I'm all about it. I love pewter. It reminds me of back in the day when everything was pewter and life was cool. So next on our list is going to be God Tier by Steamforged Games. I'm a pretty big fan of Steamforged Games, and God Tier is a hex-based PvP game where 2 players take each other on by controlling kind of characters supported by their little minions. You can once again jump into this pretty cheap, especially if you have somebody to go halves on a starter set with you, and as you progress in ability, you can scale up. You can play with anywhere from 1 to 3 of the heroes and their cadres of minions. It's a lot of fun. It's pretty fast moving. It's quite back and forth, and it's very tactically challenging. But you can definitely get into this if you have somebody to go halvesies with for about 20 to 30 bucks, which isn't a major issue. You can have yourself fielding a full team for just under 100. Which is great. Even less if you just use everybody from the starter set yourself. Now, third on the list is going to be Stargrave, and I'm going to join this at the hip with Frostgrave because they're both from Osprey Games and they both do the same thing. Stargrave and Frostgrave are miniature agnostic systems for science fiction and fantasy games that are designed to make it very easy for you to use whatever you have to hand to play a game. You can either just do one-shots or you can do campaigns. It's all very simple, it's all very easy to follow, it's all very intuitive, and it all just makes a huge amount of sense. One of the greatest things about this is the fact that it is miniature agnostic, which I'm just a massive fan of. As I get older, I love miniature agnostic systems more and more, and I just really like being able to see a miniature, like it, buy it, and then use it in something later on down the line. Big fan. While we're talking about Osprey Games, let's talk about Gaslands Refueled, a definitive cult classic when it comes to miniature gaming. This is all about vehicular battles. All you have to do is pick up the book, get some old Hot Wheels, and just convert them into little wrecky rastabouts with all manner of weapons and such sticking off them. It's great. The danger zone for Gaslands Refueled is just how good it can be, and people fall down a rabbit hole of converting old die-cast cars into just the craziest Mad Max looking things you can ever see in your life. Overall though, the game is fantastic and well worth it. Now we move on to Star Wars Legion. This isn't exactly cheap, and I would argue if you have trouble giving a company like Games Workshop money because of the scale and size of it, then you got to be aware that some of your cash parted over for anything Star Wars is going to be kicked back to the mouse. So you got to keep that in mind. Disney are going to get some of your dollars or your euro or your sterling, wherever you happen to be. But Star Wars Legion is an excellent game. It is slightly on the expensive side when it comes to being involved though. The core sets, the starter sets are pretty good value, but after that things can start getting a little hairy depending on what you want to do. That said, it's a wonderful rule system that's a huge amount of fun, and it does use some of the most iconic science fiction designs ever created by a human mind. Things just don't get much more recognizable than Star Wars, and even for stuff that was, originally designed back in the late 70s, it just holds up. It just looks so good. It's wonderful. In more of a board game setting, I want to recommend Zombieicide. I really like Zombieicide. I think this game is huge amounts of fun. But one of the best things about it is this can be found absolutely everywhere. They're on Zombieicide version 2 right now, so you might even pick up the original stuff a little bit cheaper. You might be sitting there thinking, why would I do that? It's because all the original stuff is perfectly usable in Zombieicide 2 if you decide you want to buy into that later on down the line. It's made by Mantic Games. It's got their usual standard of polish and care, and it's just a whole heap of fun. Zombie games can often be bogged down by general awkwardness, I find, but Zombieicide keeps things moving and keeps things exciting. I'm a big fan of it. Manifold is a game that lots of people out there might have some experience in, and it's really interesting. One of the strongest aspects of Manifold is the weird, eldritch, just strange miniatures that you use during this. It's like the bastard love child of Edgar Allan Poe and Lovecraft. Just fantastic. Big fan of this system as well. The miniatures all look amazing, and it's well worth it if you have an enjoyment for a kind of a skirmish level thing that's a little bit bigger. It's an awkward game to describe. Up next, Wild West Exodus. I really love the aesthetic of this game. I love robot cowboys. What can I say? I love weird eldritch cults. This game just has everything. It's skirmish scale. Warcradle Studios, who make it, also do a great line of terrain that's very affordable. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful game all around. Now, moving on to one of the games I haven't played yet, but I'm just about to drop quite a bit of money investing into, The Drowned Earth. This is a really fun looking game that does very interesting things with its terrain rules, and the miniatures are just fantastic. Once again, keep in mind that they are metal though, so if you don't like that sort of thing, you may not like this. One of the things I think is so interesting about this game is that you can just buy your starter set and you're good to go. There's no shenanigans, there's no messing around. You just pop down for the tribe that interests you and off you go. You get stuck in. I love it. I'm also a big fan of some of the MDF terrain out there that's been made for it, and the combination of the two has made it just something I have to get involved in. I can't not play this game. It looks too much fun. One Page Rules is a system I recommend everybody out there take a look at. One Page Rules is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a company that provides games where the rules can be broken down onto one page. They largely design as replacement systems for Games Workshop stuff. Heavily simplified and based off Games Workshop ranges, they also provide their own miniatures in two different forms. You can pick them up printed on their Etsy pages, or you can get the STL files, print them yourself, and go about it that way. One Page Rules pricing is fantastic because everything is free unless you want to buy the miniatures and the STLs, and you can follow them on their Patreon. That's another way to get your hands on some free stuff. I don't do that. I've no idea of the details of that. You're going to have to go look up that one yourself. And finally, on my list of fun stuff, I've got Mantic Games. Mantic are, in many ways, what Games Workshop used to be, and a large part of that is because Mantic is a lot of old Games Workshop heads. Games like Kings of War play a lot like Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and Dreadball plays a lot like Blood Bowl. There's a lot to look at with Mantic. I would recommend looking across all their systems and all their miniatures. They got a lot of really fun stuff. There's no point in breaking it down to one individual thing. If you're looking for almost a direct replacement for Games Workshop, or you think Games Workshop has headed in very much the wrong direction for the last 15 years or so, then Mantic is going to take you back in time to where you want to be. And that's really it. This list isn't exhaustive. It's not, a be-all and end-all of what you should be playing if you're bored of Games Workshop. It's just some recommendations, the vast majority of which I've played myself, and then some that have really caught my eye. And that's about it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and you found it helpful. If this does well, I'll probably do something focusing specifically on miniatures and where to source non-Games Workshop miniatures for those who want them. But that's it, guys. Remember to have a lot of fun on the tabletop, and thank you so much for watching.